So I'm going to talk about industrial strategy in Africa. I will try to take the case of Ethiopia, where I have better knowledge on it, rather than all talking about selected cases in Africa. But I will try to present around three topics. The first one will be, I'll try to give all kind of refresh the theoretical base of industrial policy. And then I will try to give an overview of industrialization in Africa, especially by looking at challenges and opportunities that are available to Africa, and then goes on to Ethiopia's industrial strategy. And I'll try to see the strategies and policy instruments that are in effect now. And I'll try to give some success stories that have been well documented in literature, and challenges, and then finally some suggestions. So as you might know, all of you, the theoretical basis for industrial policy is, it is a kind of industrial policy is actually kind of a controversial thing among economists and different development scholars, because depending on the theoretical schools, some people are pro to industrial policy, some are not supporting industrial policy. And also the definition itself is problematic. There is no a common definition for industrial policy. So I would like to take the definition, which I think is a broader definition by Warwick, which says any type of intervention or government policies that attempts to improve a business environment or to alter the structure of economic activity towards technologies or tasks that are expected to offer better perspectives for economic growth and social welfare. So the basic premise of industrial policy is markets fails, actually. Yeah. So that means there is no way of sharing the costs or the positive and the negative externalities that come out of the market, and the market itself is not able to lead industrialization process on the right track, on the way the given country wants to move its economy. So for that, the justification. To give you some of the source of market failure, the first one is a positive externality, especially if one firm takes a move to do something whose benefit cannot be taken only by the firm, and it will be available for maybe any firm in the market, especially in case of innovation and research and development expenditure. So there is a positive externality. So it may not give adequate incentive for firms to go into this kind of activities. The second one is the case associated with agglomeration externality, positive externalities that come out of agglomeration. When government, if that kind of agglomeration creates an incentive only for one firm, it is possible that monopoly power may develop. So this needs intervention by the government to help other firms enter to the market, or in other words, to reduce the entry barrier that is created by the incumbent firm. And the other one is coordination failure. Appropriate strategies to develop or to lead the economy toward the sustained growth, and it requires a coordination. The market by itself cannot coordinate. And then the other one is information asymmetry and incomplete markets. So these are to give you a highlight of what all of you may know. And the other issue that I want to share with you is a type of the categories of industrial policies that are applied. These are also depending on the theoretical basis. some people divide into two, only horizontal and selective industrial policies, but some development economists split horizontal industrial policy into two, functional industrial policy and horizontal industrial policy. The first one, functional, aims at improving the working of the market, just the working of the market, and the second one is aimed at promoting specific activities across sectors. But as I've said, these two are mostly seen used interchangeably, but the horizontal industry policy goes a bit further than functional industrial policy. On the other hand, selective industrial policy is aimed at propelling specific activities or sectors. So this is based on picking versus creating winners. It's a matter of choice by country or based on different theoretical perspectives, or selecting a given industry on the basis of comparative advantage, and also leading versus following the market. So on this basis, it is possible that one strategy would be on the basis of selecting the winner or creating a winner. So these are seen from different perspectives, especially from the neoclassical economists' perspective. Neoclassical economists support industrial policy only in cases where markets don't give any incentive or where markets fail. Otherwise, they prefer the market to be more of left unintervened. So according to them, the market by itself selects industries and firms and ensures efficient allocation of resources. So this is the idea. So in a sense, they support functional industrial policy. On the other hand, evolutionary economists prefer selective industrial policies. To some extent, also horizontal industrial policies are promoted. Selective industrial policies are crucial to the success of a country, especially science, technology, and innovation. Policies are interested to spur structural change towards dynamic industries and foster technological upgrading. So at the core of this is the importance of science, technology, and the innovation, which is less likely to be provided through the market system, which requires a kind of some sort of guidance by the government. And the other one is the structuralist school. They also believe in selective or selective intervention, or you can call vertical type of industrial policy, which is believed to spur industrialization, targeting industries with high potential. Well, this was marked by the import substitution industrialization strategies that was widely introduced in the case of Latin America. So, and mostly it is led by the comparative advantage. So these are briefly the theoretical grounds. On the basis of the objectives, the broader objectives of industrial policy, because we need to align industrial policies to the national development goals. So the objectives should be set according to the national development objectives. There are about 10 broader objectives that are identified in UNIDO's classification. The first one is increased productive activities. The second one is to deepen global market integration. The third one is maximizing domestic value capture. Fourth is to generate productive employment. The fifth is improve quality of employment. The sixth is ensure inclusive production. The seventh is build economic resilience, and the eighth is to promote self-sufficiency. Ninth, improve resource efficiency and management and reduce pollution. So depending on the priority of a given country, one may select some of these objectives and do try to design instruments that are appropriate to realize these objectives. So when we talk about instruments, the available instruments, and also, as I've said, the objective prioritization of the objective should be based on the context of a country. What is the most pressing problem or economic issue that should be solved by a country, and then what kind of instruments should be selected or designed. So there is some kind sort of suggestion on the basis of the level of development of a country. So the instruments that are more of being suggested by to low-income economies, they are classified into different policy domains, and also they are classified on the basis of market-based, and also the type of direct provision. So on the product market domain, there are import tariffs, duty drawbacks, tax credits, investment, foreign direct investment incentives, where the government is supposed to provide procurement policy, export market information, linkage programs, FDI, country management, one-stop shop, and so forth. In terms of labor markets, wage tax credits, subsidies, training grants. In this, the intervention of the government includes training institutes, skills council, so establishing this kind of support is expected. And in terms of capital market, this is aimed at solving capital constraint. So this may include directed credit to selected areas, interest rate subsidies. So with this, the government may prefer to give loan guarantees and designing some sort of guideline for development banks to provide for the selected industries. With respect to land market, subsidized rental is the common instrument. So it includes, in this case, specialized economic zone, or special economic zone, or industrial processing zone, or industrial parks, providing industrial, which is very much popular in case of Ethiopia. And the final, in technology, in case of technology transfer supporters, innovation schemes, and technology support programs are some of the instruments that the government will take. So on this ground, I will go on to the prospect of industrialization in Africa. As you may know, the year between 2016 to 2025 has been identified by Africa as the decade of industrialization again, because the crucial importance of industrialization for Africa structural transformation has been refreshed. And so the central, what is central to industrial policy in Africa is the need to support in accelerating and broadening or deepening of the production linkage to the Africa's commodity endowment. One of the opportunity that Africa has is it is endowed with very much needed minerals and the commodities, which are very crucial. So the opportunity is to try to link up industrialization or the manufacturing sector at the center of industrial policy, as you know, is the focus is on manufacturing. So the manufacturing, it is possible for Africa to capitalize on the manufacturing center that has stronger linkage with the commodity center. That is what is this kind of recommendation is. You can see everywhere in different documents and prescriptions that have been given for Africa. So the main advantage is it has greater difference across sectors in terms of productivity. This gives opportunity for Africa to increase output, that is aggregate output of the countries in Africa. So it is the region with the most to gain from structural transformation. So industrial policy is very much needed to accelerate structural transformation in Africa. When I come to a brief overview of challenges Africa is facing, one is the dynamic nature of the world in terms of the technological progress and change in different economic order. So we are facing now a global economy which is totally different from previous late industrializers, but on the other hand, we don't have instruments that are very much new for Africa. And designing industrial policies that aligns with the changing global and situation and that best suits the local context, which should be independent of external influence, is one of the key dilemma that Africa is facing right now. Because there is no lack of recommendations and very attractive policy documents for Africa. The issue is which one is more applicable, which one is more fruitful in terms of bringing about structural transformation. So the difficulty of creating conducive political and national environment and the associated inefficiency of government in enforcing policy has remained to be one of the key challenges for Africa. And on the other hand, as I have said, putting industrial policy into effect requires a great deal of financial resources. So this is not there, despite the fact that Africa has much resource and from revenues from commodity sectors. The problem is to try to lead this resource into this financing industrialization or structural change. So the very recent report of IMF shows that Africa is losing more money in terms of capital flight than what it gets from its commodity sector. So that is this makes the potential Africa has in structural transformation not to be fully realized. So Africa's higher productivity sectors fail to generate enough jobs, absorb a rapidly growing labor force, and the share of workers employed in high productivity sector has declined over the last several decades. While labor in Africa began to move, the kind of structural transformation that is happening in Africa is not the one that was observed in successful countries in Asia. So labor is moving out of agriculture to service sector instead of moving to the manufacturing and more value-adding sectors. So the share of manufacturing in GDP for Africa as a whole has been declining since the mid-1970s. So this is what shows Africa's challenge in terms of manufacturing value added per capita in Africa. If you see, Africa is far below the global average, and the global manufacturing value added has shown increment, but that of Africa on average remained to be the same. And the other thing is I've tried to set up look at the data from World Development Indicator, the kind of employment in agricultural sector, in industry and service sector. As you can see, agricultural sector's employment has shown a decline, but the shift to the service is observed by the blue line in the middle. It is increasing, while that of industry has remained the same, or in some cases declining. So there are so many differences among, of course, African countries. On the right-hand side, we can see the value added of agriculture and value added of service sector and value added of industry. So the value added in agricultural sector is very low, and the value added of medium and high-tech industry, which is supposed to be improved if Africa's capability, technological capability has to be increased, has also remained very low. So this shows very poor structural transformation or lack of the desired structural transformation in Africa. And this is in terms of number, we can see Africa and other developing Asia, we can see the comparison between developing Asia, Latin America, and Sub-Saharan Africa. So Africa is again far below the comparators in other parts of the world. And in terms of export, also we can see manufacturing export was about less than 25% on average in Africa. And this is average. Average is not actually a very good indicator. There is very far difference between African countries. So on the right-hand side, you can see Sub-Saharan Africa's share of primary goods, which is very far. The gap between the share of primary goods in Sub-Saharan Africa and the comparator countries at the same level of development in the rest of the world is very much increasing. So that shows how we are very much far behind other countries in terms of structural transformation. So when I come to Ethiopia's case, the same applies in Ethiopia's case, but there has been some sort of difference improvement as compared to the year before 1991. And after that, after some sort of economic reform has been introduced. So Africa's industrial policy was formally introduced in 2002, 2003, based on the broader development strategy of agricultural development-led industrialization. Here, it is good to note that in different documents, some people have been touting Ethiopia to have succeeded in terms of industrialization. So there is some truth in that, and also there are so many things that remain to. So I will try to focus on that. So it was designed, the industrial policy was designed on the basis of development state ideology. So we have different kinds of, about 3 types of ideologies. So developmental state has been taken, drawing on the success of the Asian experience to lead active government intervention in industrial development, particularly to incentivize private sector. And then based on that, the government set ambitious targets to become the hub of light manufacturing, especially in 2015. So a very big move was introduced in Ethiopia. They will see that, and develop 3-phase industrial development roadmap, depending on the level of development of the country, what is expected to develop. So that kind of roadmap has been prepared, and also Ethiopia has been touted for its success in pursuing self-made industrialization strategies. One of the reason for which some people, like some known famous economists like Noma and Stiglitz, have been appreciating Ethiopia's case is the fact that Ethiopia has declined not to accept some of the structural adjustment strategies, while accepting some of them as to be beneficial. So this industrial strategy has been implemented over 4 different national development plans. The first one being SDPRP, which is Sustainable Development and Poverty Eradication Program. And the second one was Plan for Accelerated and Sustained Development in Poverty. And the other one, the last 2 are the first and the second Growth Transformation Plan. So all of these objectives, the core of the national objective in all these are poverty reduction and employment creation. This is the national objective. So a bigger move towards manufacturing has been introduced in the first growth and transformation plan, Ethiopia, and also so many incentives have been introduced based on that. So as I've tried to give you the classification of industrial policy strategies, so Ethiopia has introduced both horizontal and vertical, or selective and functional type of instruments. In the industrial development strategy, there are some horizontal policies that have been indicated to be very important, and the government has taken move. The first one is maintaining macroeconomic stability. This is national macro level policy, building a functional and well-regulated financial sector, creating dependable infrastructure service, developing skilled and effective human resource, creating an efficient civil service and legal framework, and developing industrial zones in major cities and towns to provide all the required infrastructures and utilities. So these are, and also vertical policies of selective priority. Ethiopia believed to have adequate land and also human resource, and Ethiopia wanted to link up its resource sector to the manufacturing sector, as I have said. As I have indicated, the potential Africa has. So Ethiopia has selected about mainly four areas. The first one is textile and the garment, meat, leather and leather products, and also other agro-processing industries such as sugar and sugar-related industries. And again, construction industry. These are the key priority areas which are picked by the government and provided with special supports. Then another strategy is strengthening micro and the small enterprises. This is believed to be a springboard for structural transformation in Ethiopia. So special for selective sectors, in order to meet the ambitious targets that were set in the national development plans, Ethiopia set some special incentives or special instruments used to transform the sector. These incentives include economic incentives and non-economic incentives. Some of the economic incentives, or you can say fiscal incentives, the credit, land and duty and tax exemption, capacity building, direct public investment are some of the key areas that the government did a lot of work on. And the special industries that have been picked for top priority export earning are textile and leather, and also later the flour or the cut flour industry has been included. So this was not picked, selected by the government, but it was by itself, it evolved to be one of the key source of foreign currency earning for Ethiopia. So the special support that have been given, what kind of support? Because Ethiopia has succeeded, achieved some success in terms of textile industry and the garment industry. So what were the special instruments used in Ethiopia to bring some change? So as a capacity building effort, two sector-specific institutions were set up by Ethiopia. The first one is the Textile Industry Development Institute, which we call it TD, and the other one is Leather Industry Development Institute. And as a means of, or an instrument to improve the competitiveness of these industries, Ethiopia has introduced instruments that such as benchmarking. This is where textile and garment industries and also leather industries are linked up with global frontier companies around the globe. And the other one in institutional twinning, in which these special development institutes were linked up with international institutes and practices that have been well known to have brought about good success. And the other thing was providing market research and information, provision of information for these sectors. And the fourth one is the Kaizen instrument, which was introduced by Japanese partners, which is just this management tool. So these were mentioned to have brought some important developments. And the other important thing, which we have also found in our research to have brought good success is industrial park development and also integrated agro-industrial parks. So the most celebrated and successful intervention, despite some limitation, is this intervention, which is actually which has been done by using government resources. These solved issues of utilities and easier public service. They helped in attracting foreign direct investment in manufacturing sector. So this industrial park, coupled with the external support that offers free access to American and the European market, has helped a lot, especially the AGOA and the EBA to the European market have helped to boost Ethiopia's export. So to what extent has this helped? As you can see, we have now currently operational about 13 industrial parks, which has contributed a lot in terms of job creation and export. So the leading source of export is, we have industrial park which is situated to the south of the country in Hawassa, and then Bolelelmi in Addis, and also close to Addis Eastern Industrial Zone. So these industrial parks totally, they generated about 164 million or $65 million over the last 2019, over the 2019 to 20. So if we look at the contribution of these industrial parks to the foreign currency earning, totally the products that are exported out of these industrial parks have accounted up about 43% of the total manufacturing earning in Ethiopia. So we can see the contribution of industrial parks. So when you come to the key success factors in the areas where Ethiopia has achieved, the reason behind some of the success achieved are, the first one is comprehensive fiscal and tax incentives. There was some sort of flexible adjustment in these measures over the last 20 years. So income tax exemption, duty and other tax-free imports, export tax exemption, and also the other instruments in relation to efficiency enhancing non-fiscal incentives include one-stop shop provision by the Investment Commission of Ethiopia and expedited visa procedure for foreign firms, custom facilitation, guarantee against expropriation, and the right to own immovable property by foreign firms, subsidized utility rates, which I have said in industrial parks, especially guarantee for remittance of funds, and the right to open and operate foreign currency account by manufacturing firms are some of the efficiency enhancing non-fiscal incentive. The other one is ease of access to industrial parks. Industrial park developers enjoy 60 to 80 years land. By the way, we do have two types of industrial park. One is a private and the other one is government-owned industrial park. So these have helped a lot. So the overall performance of the industrial, there is some sort of percentage change in terms of the contribution of the manufacturing in export and also in terms of the value added. But in absolute, that is in absolute term. But in terms of percentage, not much has been achieved. So the manufacturing value added of Ethiopia remained below 5% over 2 decades and below so many comparators even in Africa. Especially export of textile and leather have remained far below the targets despite all the support that we have provided to this. So in the first GTP and the second GTP, the targets, we did not achieve more than 10 or 20% of the target. So on the other hand, the Ethiopian flour export, which was not on the list of the government selected industry, has shown greater export performance. And this suggested the problem with the design of our policy also. Some people argue that it's not appropriate to select the winners. Instead, we have to try, through using trial and error, we have to give opportunity, show some sort of flexibility. So to give you some highlight on Ethiopia's position in terms of competitive industrial performance ranking. You can see two of the countries in Africa and one country, Sri Lanka, from the Asia. Sri Lanka is at the top of all the African countries. And if you look at Ethiopia, we are at the bottom. So we have remained to be here. And further, if we look at Ethiopia's manufacturing value added, as I have told you earlier, it has remained 5% of the its manufacturing value added has remained about 5%. And also manufactured export has been, as I've said, due to these industrial parks and support for access to Western markets. We have achieved some to about 20% in around 2013 to 2003. And then at the end, after 2015, it has shown a decline. And in terms of the medium and high-tech manufacturing value added in total manufacturing also, we have shown some sort of improvement. This is mainly attributed to the attraction of foreign firms, especially in the pharmaceutical areas. So what are the limitations and the key constraints that we have faced? Of course, some people argue that it is very difficult to establish indisputable causal link between policies and outcomes. However, we have found in two of our projects, we have found very key issues that have constrained Ethiopia's industrial policy. The first one issue is a design and also implementation, inadequacy of the intervention package. And if you talk to the the managers of industry, they tell you that what is written on the paper is not actually there. And also some of the incentives or instruments have remained to be inadequate. The other one is poor trade logistics and lack of quality inputs in domestic markets. So one of the sad stories is that most of the foreign firms have been invited to enter into industrial parks, thinking that they can source raw materials from local, especially the textile. But at the end of the day, we are forced to be net importer of these raw materials. Problem with rent allocation among the private sector. Yeah, so there is no very clear guidance. There is some of the firms are unfairly benefiting, as we have tried to see from the government intervention. The rent that is created through industrial policy has been misallocated by some firms. So there is sort of problem also with the relationship between the government and the private sector. Some of the industries over the last 20 years have been labeled private, but when you look at, they have some support from the government. So this kind of problems have limited full-scale implementation of industrial policy. So when I come to the key constraints facing Africa's industrialization from different sources, so the basic things are linked, as I argue that to what Daron Asumiglu and Robinson said, as they associate the root cause of policy failure, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, with what they called extractive political institutions. These political institutions are very important to set the quality of governance, the effectiveness of the government. So this has limited, and similarly, assessment by UN in 2014 associated Africa's policy failure to weak institutional structure and poor design. Prevalence of low trust regulatory environment made interaction with the government to be relational, based on some sort of complex and tacit personal interactions, rather than on objective relation. So I will try to finish my talk by giving some sort of suggestion. The first thing is industrial policy are expected to be organic, based on the local context, and should support the changing needs of industry, not simply as a set of organization with function, but should be dynamic, developing strategies to meet the goals of the national development, and monitoring the effectiveness of strategies should be done regularly, adjusted when they are not serving their purpose. Some sort of flexibility is needed. So the goal should be evaluated and measured by government periodically against changing industry. More efforts are needed in designing industrial policy organization that are capable of supporting industrial transformation. And also the issue of mitigating conflict between static short-term targets and long-term dynamic learning is very important. In Ethiopia's case, we have found that some of the objectives of, for example, the objective of earning foreign currency and also the objective of developing local technological capability have been in conflict. So this sort of problem should be fixed. So I think that is all I have. Thank you for listening.